So hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, we are still looking at Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's such a good game, it really is. It is a real pity that the force feedback and so many people having lots of issues with this game. I've heard so many stories regarding the force feedback, people with wheels that haven't got any force feedback at all, or wheels that are just pulling to one side as soon as you start driving, clutch pedals that are being used as accelerator pedals. There's just so many issues with this. I feel lucky to at least be able to play the game to some degree. It's not 100% perfect, and I'm sure that's being seen within the lap times that I'm able to set. No way can I compete with the top of the leaderboards at the moment, but I have been enjoying looking at the special events page, which is definitely something you need to look at with regards to your sort of statistics, driver profile and everything. You're going to have to sort of take part in these at some point. But the one thing I wanted to cover during this video was setups. Now, so many people seem to be struggling with just launching into setups, whether they're unable to save them or whether they're unable to load them. Obviously, this isn't like Project Cars 2, where you're going to be able to look at somebody else's setup and download it. That's definitely not something that's doable within this game. But as soon as you start working on setups, you can load them as soon as you come back into a game to continue. Or if you've been working on a setup and you go to a certain race, that setup should be there for you to be able to just continue with, whether you're making fine adjustments to it. Or like myself, I thought I would set a benchmark lap here during this event, and hopefully when the force feedback gets changed, just come back using the same setup and just see if the force feedback has made any difference at all. So let's get into having a look at making a setup within this special events section. So going into the special events, and I'm just going to choose the first one on the list in the dry at Silverstone using the Bentley Continental GT3. And you can already see on the right hand side there, initially I was in the 202s at around 480 on the leaderboard, but I've moved into 76 spot, hitting a 159.292. So as soon as the game's loaded up, we're going to go into the setup menu, and I'm just going to start making a few adjustments that I made during the last run I did. I didn't save a setup at all, so we're going to come back in and I'm just going to reduce the tyre pressures. One thing you need to be thinking about the tyre pressures within this game, you want to be looking at a hot pressure of around 26 psi, and we'll look at the tyre pressures as they change throughout the lap as well. Maybe a hot lap isn't particularly the right place to get an idea of how the tyres are going to work in an actual race. They do seem to be resetting after each lap, and we'll look at that. But yeah, just changing some of the things that I changed in my previous run. Just making a few alterations. It's quite heavy on the traction control, this car, or you seem to be able to get it sideways a little bit too easy, so just using a little bit more traction control at the moment than I'd probably want. Trying to loosen or soften the rear suspension to try and get more grip through the rear, and the brake pressure for me seems to be a little bit too much at 100, just seems to want to kick out the rear, although there's such a forward brake bias anyway. I've just brought that down a tiny bit. And one thing I'd cover in this video as well is just how much effect changing the ride height has to the amount of aero balance you're getting on the car. So if we lower the front end of the car as low as it goes or as high as it goes, you can see the difference down the bottom with the aero distribution. So lowering it as low as it goes, you can see that the aero balance down the bottom is still in a negative effect. So for us to start implementing any sort of positive effect to the front aerodynamics, we need to start increasing the rear ride height, and you can see the figure gets lower and almost just goes into a positive angle. But obviously the higher the rear wing goes, it's still actually increasing the amount of front end aero that's working. So once we're happy with the setup and you just click the Y button, it brings you to the save option. So if you just keep pressing LB, you'll cycle through load, rename and delete. But we want to save this. So go into save, click on the top bar and call it whatever you want to do. You can't see me naming it at the moment, but I've called it test. And you can come down into the description and just leave yourself a little note as to what you're testing. Now in this I'm choosing to test a high rear wing. So I'm just calling this in the description high rear wing. And click confirm, and that's the setup all saved. So we'll come out and do a little session and see how that works. So straight away coming into turn one, and it feels very light at the rear end of the car. Very easy to turn in, lots of response on the turn in, a tiny bit of brake on the turn in, and then just throwing the car in. And as soon as we get through there, the rear end's it's got absolutely zero grip. So straight back into the setup, and it's time to make a few alterations and see just how much difference adjusting that rear wing angle or the rear ride height actually makes. So you can see as we lower the rear ride height how much effect it has on the amount of aero balance going through the front end of the car. Now it's such a difference that this makes. You can see the turn-in response has changed totally. Nowhere near as much turning as I would like, and it's just so stable through the rear end now that I'm just not getting the amount of turn-in that I want. It feels very sort of unresponsive on the turn-in, and you can see I'm getting a lot of understeer. So quickly back to the garage, back into just make the adjustments to the aero at the rear wing and just increase that rear wing now. So the more rear wing that we're actually adding, we're also increasing the amount of front wing, or the rear ride height that we're adding. It's increasing the amount of front wing that we're getting. So you can see there the turn-in is a tiny bit better, much less understeer on that turn-in, nowhere near as much aero getting lost through there. And I'm still not sure whether I should add a little bit more, but I do try just to see how this goes. I've managed to get through that section, so I'll just see sort of how the rest of the lap handles, how the car handles throughout the rest of the lap. Nowhere near hitting my apexes really, and obviously the force feedback isn't 100% by a long way. My pedals aren't working at all, so usually when I get near locking the brakes, I start to get a bit of a vibration through the pedal, as you would using ABS. The pedal will start to bounce, and that just doesn't happen in this game, which is amazing really. It's something you sort of come to get used to using the pedals that I'm using. It's such an intuitive piece of equipment that just really warns you when you're sort of reaching the maximum amount of braking that you can put through the pedal before you're actually going to start locking the brakes. And I just get so used to using it, especially in Project Cars 2 and Assetto Corsa. Not to have it in this game is definitely something I hope that they're going to be looking at, as well as the force feedback. Just so many issues that people are having, but still the 30 frames per second doesn't really seem to be an issue, I don't think, when you're driving. Yes, the replays don't look anywhere near as polished, even though Project Cars 2 actually runs them in 30 frames per second. But you can see here, just as I cross the line, the tyre pressures just go back to 26. So we're running around 27 at the front, which is a little bit too hot, to be honest. And then they start to just reset every time you go across the start-finish line, which isn't going to be helpful at all using this setup actually in a race, because obviously having done one lap, my front tyres are just getting too hot. So this isn't the sort of tyre pressures that you're going to want to be running in a race or for numerous laps. But again, just making a few alterations to the rear ride height just to try and get it a little bit more dialed in. See how we go on this one. little bit more responsive on the turn in there, but still a corner that I think I struggle with quite a lot. That first corner, it's just one of those where you're trying to carry so much speed just to try and keep the momentum up to go through the S's. But again, this one as well, if you don't get that right and you scrub too much speed, look at the difference that I lost there. So yeah, this is such an important corner coming up. Just to get this right, I think I need to be clipping far more curb on the right hand side as well. So yeah, this is really just a bit of a test, just to see if making certain changes, just how much effect they have on the car. I know obviously with the force feedback not working at its best, it's very hard to make adjustments to know 100% that they're decent adjustments on the car, and just trying to make more adjustments here and there, lowering the rear camber angle just to try and get more straight line speed, really get more front end response, just softening out the front suspension as well. It seems to be quite bouncy through a lot of sections on this circuit. There's so much undulation, and obviously if I'm making the springs a bit softer, I'm going to reduce the bumps as well, just soften those out a tiny bit all around, I think, just to try and allow a little bit more traction through the bumpy phases of the circuit. And it's still quite awkward navigating through these menus. I seem to be pressing the A button and B button all the time, just getting myself confused. But yeah, just going back out, run a few more laps in this session. I think I do 9 laps in total, and I never actually beat my 1:59.2, something like that. But yeah, I'm just, like I said, just trying to set a benchmark lap so that when I come back and the force feedback patch has hopefully been released, hopefully it's going to make a difference to be able to see just how much of a difference I'm losing through the force feedback. Obviously someone set 1:57, and I quite like how it tells you the current fastest lap set by a GT3 driver. Obviously, you know, we're all still, or people are still setting 1:57s, so it's nice to see that the real life drivers are able to set a faster lap time than some of us sim racers at the moment. I always think when we set laps in the game and we just obliterate the real life lap times, it's just nowhere near realistic. So it's really nice to see at the moment that sim racers in general, none of us have been able to match the real life lap time. But yeah, it's quite a useful thing to do, this special events. They are something that's going to feature, if you look at the top right hand corner, you get all these different abbreviations which means something to do with your driver profile, and doing these ones is something that's going to be increasing those stats as well, which will also feed towards being able to do the competitive servers in the multiplayer section. So yeah, just trying to get used to driving this car as well, which is all something new. I've not done any laps in the Bentley at all. The only car I've really driven in the game so far was the McLaren, and then just heading back into the setup. So finally finishing out my setup, having done 9 laps, and the fastest lap was a 1:59.4, and I don't know why I end up calling this setup something completely different. I seem to have got sidetracked through that, but once you're happy with that setup, you're going to press the Y button again, and you're going to come to the save menu. So I'm just going to press over the test one that I've been doing, and I'm going to rename that something else. So unfortunately you can't see me naming it. I don't know why this does this during the capture, but I decided to name it the same lap time that I've set. I just find this much easier when you're coming back to setups. Like I say, I named it something completely different with the last thousandths of a second, hundredths of a second. But I like to call all my setups by the lap time that I've been able to set with it, so that when I use it again, I know the sort of lap time that I was able to hit using that setup. So I'll rename the description using something else, a fairly stable setup. and just press confirm on that, and that's the setup saved. So if you want to come back and continue setting things up with that, that setup should be there to use for future. So we'll just proof that. So come back into the game, and I'm just going to press the Y button when you're ready, Jay. Well, yes, that's what I was doing. I was just showing you that in this setup, it is a normal setup. So yeah, come into the save section, and then press the LB button because we want to load it. Click the one that you're wanting to load and just press the button to load it, and there you go. All the setup is there, and just continue working on it. If you make a tiny change, just press the B button and back out of it. You don't have to save it every single time. You can just press the B button and continue making adjustments without saving it. So I'm going to leave you here with a race that I did just yesterday in the multiplayer. And just to showing you how inconsistent, let's say, that I was throughout this race. As much as I managed to stay in the top 2, and the guy in front there has a blinding setup. His force feedback's working really well in this. He just seems to pull away. So battling for first place wasn't really something that I was trying to do, and just getting used to how the start goes. This is my second race I've done so far. So yeah, just a terrible start from me, to be honest, with the guy getting alongside. I do like the feature. It just shows you exactly where it is, so I know there's someone right alongside me. Nearly get taken out by someone at the rear, but managed to just stay ahead from third place and keep in that second place position. So I'll leave you with this replay. Hope you enjoy watching it. I think it's about 10-14 laps or something like that. So all these things go towards your driver profile as well. Setting lap after lap is something that you'll have to do on every circuit. So yeah, I'll leave you with it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and fingers crossed we also get that patch sometime soon. And just pay attention to going through that section as well, lap after lap, just how much effect the curbs have on the car. Really interesting to see. But yeah, thanks for watching, and also look at how useful using the insert button is. If you're on Xbox One, you can just press the insert button on the keyboard if you're using a keyboard, and make adjustments to the brake bias. So as you'll see in a moment, I'd just make a few adjustments. Just seems to be understeering a little bit on corner entry, this car. I haven't done any setting up. As you can see there, just opening it up and making a few adjustments to the brake balance, just to try and get more turning response to the car and less understeer effects on corner entry. So yeah, as I said before, I'll leave you with the race. Hope you enjoy it, and ciao for now.
Excellent job there, P2. Well managed. Bring it back home safely. Go, go, go.
So yeah, I managed to hold on to second place, and as you pull into the pits, so as soon as the race is finished, that's it. The lobby just starts all over again, and that's it. It would be nice to have actually seen some sort of podium celebration for the top 3 drivers. I hope they bring that into it. If it's something that's actually featured within the game itself, it would be really nice just to see that featured in the multiplayer lobbies as well. But yeah, thanks for watching guys, and ciao for now.